Hi, I'm Jasmine Din, and for my performance ethnography video, I'm going to be discussing the differences between ethnicity. And the ethnicities I chose was me, which I am Vietnamese, so Asian, as a broad perspective, and then I interviewed my friend who is African American. And there are a lot of similarities and differences that I didn't think I would see, but after interviewing him, I realized that there are. I'm just going to start off with the differences and what my friend said alone about how he feels about being African American. And so I asked him, what does it mean to you to be African American? And he told me that it means to change how the past has judged people for who they are today. And how, as an African American, you have this history where you know that there's racial crimes against you and people judge you because in the past they didn't like you. And he focused more on the fact that there are hate crimes against African Americans because there were no equality between them, and a lot of African Americans were killed, similar to like the KKK, and how you couldn't share a water fountain or go to the same restaurant or sit on the bus because you were colored. Which we understand nowadays that there's no difference, but back then it offended a lot of people. And also, we touched up on the N word that ends in ER. And I'll base that on why I mentioned why it ends in ER differently from how it ends now later on. But I found a lot of similarities in this because my parents who came over had hate crimes against them because they were Asian. And I found this difficult to believe because I was just like, well, I'm just like anybody else. Why would anybody want to be so racist against Asian people? And the similarities between African Americans and Asians is the fact that no matter what we look like, we will always be offended by it. In the past, it was just more brutal, and people would bully and kill and tell people that they were aliens because they looked different. And even nowadays, I didn't realize it, but the similarities that me and my friend have is the fact that as an African American, the N word ending in ER used to be so offensive. But nowadays, people are constantly like, oh, what's up? And then instead of ending it with an ER, they end it with an A. And they take it as a joke. Just like any other things, like when you see somebody, an African American, walking around with baggy pants and loose shirts and not dressed very well, inappropriate, people automatically judge them saying, oh, well, they just work on welfare. They're from the projects. They probably have no good in them and they're not going to get anywhere. And that's extremely judgmental. And just like when people see Asians, they're like, oh, you're good at math, you're good at science and technology, which is another judgmental characteristic as well. And it's just worse for African Americans because they constantly get deemed that they're not going to get anywhere and they have no future just because of the way they dress. And just because it's a broad perspective of how commonly people who dress like that end up being like that, but not everybody is like that. Maybe they just don't have the money to dress differently, or maybe that's how they grew up, and so that's why they dress like that. Asians, on the other hand, aren't really judged for how they dress, but they're known for being smart. And not all of us are. Like, if I took a math class, people are always like, well, why are you even in this math class? This is an easy math class. Aren't you good at math? And I kind of get offended by that because, sorry, I'm not like every other Asian. So I see a lot about how my friend felt about that. And he was telling me from his own words is when he was walking around the projects, just walking around, he saw these kids who were skateboarding. And he was saying, you know, who would tell those kids that as 7-year-olds, if they kept practicing every day and did so good, that they could actually have a future in that? Nobody does. Because society today, we base everything on academics. You have to be good at school to get somewhere. You have to finish high school and finish college to get somewhere. But there are people who become pro skaters and they didn't even go to school. And now they're on TV and they make tons of money. So there's just, with ethnicity, I realized there's a lot of racism and there's a lot of generalizations because of what we look like. And the differences and the similarities add up. The differences between African Americans and Asians is that more so African Americans were killed in the past because of who they were and what they looked like, and Asians were bullied and told to get out of here because we look like aliens. And then now, modern days, the differences are that African Americans are looked down upon because of the way they dress, whereas Asians are more commonly looked up because smarts is so highly judged on today. So there's a lot of things that I didn't think I would realize. And one last part that I really realized is the fact that back then, the things that we were yelled at for, bullied for, and turned down for, we've turned them into jokes nowadays. So my parents, they got made fun of for things like, oh, so you're fresh off the boat, or you have slanted eyes, so you need glasses, or things like that. And they're just stupid jokes and or stupid comments that they got made for in the past, but nowadays I have learned to make them into jokes, just like all the other Asians, because instead of dealing with the fact that it hurts us and bothers us, we get used to it. And so as we get used to things, it's easier to get used to things making them funny instead of dealing with it and being like, hey, that's actually really offensive. And I found myself doing that as well. When I was in grade school, I got picked on and told that, oh, I'm Asian, what are you doing at this school? You don't belong here. But as I got into high school, I was like, oh, well, I've tried to stand up to these people and it's not changing, so I'm just going to take it as a joke because it's easier that way. And I've just gotten used to it, which is probably not a good thing because we need to learn to stand our ground. Same with African Americans. A lot of them get told, oh, you're not going to get anywhere in life, so just give up, and that's what a lot of them end up doing. And that's what my friend said, is that he knows that even though he's an African American, even though he might not have a lot of money, he knows that it doesn't matter what he looks like or what he does, he's going to try as hard as he can to get somewhere to prove people wrong. And the fact that we constantly have to prove ourselves makes a big difference, because we shouldn't have to. And as much as America says that everybody is treated equally, we're not. But I learned a lot within this ethnography performance video about how differently people are looked on. And I realized a lot that how I've changed over the years and how my friend has changed over the years to try and prove people we're not what we're commonly judged for. So I hope you guys learned a lot as well, and thank you for listening.